Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar, the second of the day. And today, well, this afternoon, sorry, we're going to be looking at cleaning up your accounts. So correcting bank errors in Sage 50 accounts. Obviously, as you'll probably know, this is part of the Banking Excellence Badging event. So once you've attended 6 out of 8 the Banking Excellence webinars, you'll be able to get your badge. It'll be sent to you via a Credible, be able to stick it on your CV, show your employers, this is what you're now qualified in. Obviously, 6 out of 8 webinars and a wonderful quiz at the end with myself and Jackie, and that badge will be sent to you. Apologies, my name is Matt, and I'm going to be presenting for you today. A relatively new voice still, so at the end of the webinar, if you could leave feedback, that would be absolutely wonderful. You will be sent a survey. It just takes a quick 30 seconds to complete. If you could do that for me, be wonderful. Topics that we can cover in the future, or maybe tips for myself, or anything that you do like would be brilliant. So I've mentioned the Banking Excellence 2025 badge. What does it entail? Well, this is what it entails so far. We're up to number 6. So we've just done number 5 this morning, which was bank recurring items. Now it's obviously correcting bank errors in Sage 50. We've got harnessing the power of e-payments in Sage 50 upcoming, as well as adding your bank information to your invoices in Sage 50, then the quiz itself. So if this is your 6th webinar, all you have to do now is attend the quiz, but we'd much prefer it if you attended all 8, because obviously you're going to see more benefit, more webinars that you attend. So what are we looking at today? I've said it 3 times, I shall say it again. We are looking at correcting your bank errors in Sage 50. First off, we're going to look at the types of bank transactions that there are. Then we're going to look at the methods of correction. Some common mistake scenarios, they're going to be demonstrations. The common corrections, also demonstrations. And obviously the demonstration itself is going to be displayed for you. Now, we do have housekeeping rules. If you've been here before, you probably know them, but if you haven't, here are the rules. So you're automatically placed on mute. So if you need to cough or sneeze, don't worry, we're not going to hear you whatsoever. There is a speech bubble there with a question mark. That's for you. So if you've got any questions during this webinar, please fire them in. Today we have the wonderful Jackie, the wonderful Michael, and the wonderful Abby at hand. So all the brains are in the chat. So fire as many questions as you possibly can across. The session's going to be around about 35 to 45 minutes. So if we can't answer the question within that time period, we'll catch up with you afterwards. Okay, but as I say, with the 3 of them in attendance to answer questions, get as many as you can in. Also myself, I'm going to be here throughout, obviously. As I said as well, the session's recorded, so you will be emailed afterwards, the live recording of the session, and there is a handout attached to the webinar currently. There's a black and white and a colour version. If you download those now, it's done. You don't have to worry about it. There's going to be some handy links on there for you to take away and practice. There's also a handy guide on there as well, which I'll come to near the end of the presentation itself. So here we go. First off, I said we're going to be looking at bank transaction types, so that's what we'll look at. So this is just a few. This isn't the exhaustive list. This is essentially the main list that you may find yourself using. During this webinar, there's going to be situations that I can't cover because there's a lot of corrections and there's a lot of a multitude of mistakes that can be made, and we don't have 6 or 7 hours to go through each and every single error that can occur and its fix. So what we're going to teach you during this webinar is the main methods of correction, so that when you do identify what's gone wrong, you've got different avenues to correct said error. Okay, so that's why we're concentrating on the most popular transaction types that you see in front of you. I'm not going to read through them because I'm sure you can see them, but again, these are the most common ones that people deal with on a day-to-day basis. If you've made an error with a transaction outside, majoritively the same rules can apply, but we've got the help center and our wonderful chat support team on hand to help you identify issues and fix them as well. But as I say, let's go through the most popular ones. So you can apply the same methods of correction. What are they? Mentioned it a few times now. So bank corrections are what we're going to be focusing on, and the options are: you can edit the transaction, you could delete the transaction, or simply post the opposite of the transaction. Now, which of these ones that you would use depends on what the issue is. and how you want your audit trail to look, because remember, Sage is an audit trail and it's an account software. So it's how you want those accounts to look and what's going to be best for you to be able to decipher what's gone wrong and how you fixed it. Also, how you fix it can depend on if it's what we call a critical field or a non-critical field. I'll come on to that in the next slide. But for example, if it's a critical field, you may find yourself having to just delete the transaction or posting the opposite, because you may not be able to edit that field because it's performed other transactions elsewhere. There's been the domino effect with it, essentially. So let's have a look at what I mean by critical fields and non-critical fields. There it is in front of you. Again, if you download the handout, this is going to be available to you whenever. There's also a link at the bottom there, transaction details, delete or cancel. You can click on that. It'll take you to the help guide. But the critical fields on the left, custom supplier account reference, nominal code, bank account, date, etc. And then on the right, non-critical fields, your transaction reference, transaction details, things that don't affect anything other than the transaction itself. Tends to be the rule. Everything on the left can affect other nominal codes or accounts. Everything on the right just affects the transaction and how it looks, majoritively, I will say on that one. So what we're going to do now, without further ado, is we're going to jump in to demonstrate the three methods of correction. So my software should be visible in front of you now. What I'm going to say first is, before you do any kind of large amount of processing or anything like that, it's always wise to take a backup. Because if you go through 100 transactions and you find out the majority or a lot of them have errors in, it's probably going to be easy for you to restore back to before you made the processing errors than it is to go through and unpick each individual one. So always, always, always take a backup before a large amount of processing, just in case. It's an insurance policy for you. What I'm going to demonstrate is the three methods, so edit, delete, and posting the opposite. And I'm going to do that in quite a simple fashion because it is a demonstration, and I'm going to do that based on an internal transfer that I may have done wrong or incorrectly. The first thing, a little tip for you, is when I ever enter a module on the left-hand side, I always click clear, just to make sure I've got nothing highlighted and I'm not going to enter by accident the wrong account or anything like that at all. So I'm going to create this bank transfer as per normal. Click on my bank transfer. I'm going to select the account it's going from, my current account. And I want to put this in my new machinery savings. That's where I'm looking to put it, okay? But again, for the demonstration, let's say I'm working quickly and I click on savings by accident. Today's date, transfer, everything else looks fine. And I just want to put £100 in. Simple as that. So I click save. Ignore this, it's because I haven't run my year end, but I'm okay with that message. So what do we see? So then what I do is I check my transaction. I think, right, it's left my bank account, new machinery savings. Oh, balance hasn't changed. But what I do notice is that my savings balance has changed. So what I would do is I click on my current account where it left, and I'll click on activity. And I notice there is the transaction. And it's gone to the wrong one. Oh dear. So how do I fix that? Well, what I would do is I would head over to my transactions to see my transactions list. And I would highlight the transaction itself and click edit. Again, that's my financial year because I haven't done my year yet, year end. And here I can see the transaction itself. And notice, this is where I notice the problem, right here. So what I would simply do is edit the transaction and put it in the correct place, which again was my new machinery savings in this instance. Okay, click OK, click save. Outside my financial year, I'm fine with that. What effect has that had? So what's happened there is Sage has automatically cancelled this transaction here, which was the original one. And the reason we can tell that is, number one, it's in red. Number two, you can see the previous transactions details there. the nominal code from to. Everything else was absolutely fine. Remember, it was just the nominal code I was changing for the bank account. It's then, for me, deleted them and posted the correct ones. Nice and easy. And that was just by editing the transaction, simply editing it. The other option I have would be to post the opposite. So by doing that, I would head to my bank account. I'll go to the bank account that it's gone to. Let's say this time it's in New Machinery Savings. Okay. Pardon me. My software is going through a bit of a crash at the moment. I would look at its activity and I could see this transaction here. What I could do is just create a new transaction from New Machinery Savings if it had gone to the incorrect place and just post it straight back to where it came from. Payment amount, £100, and I could put the reference error. And what that is going to do, it's posting the opposite of the transaction I've just done. So now we'll notice that that has left New Machinery Savings and it's gone back into my current account. And you'll see that in the transactions also here. It didn't have to delete anything because I've treated it like a new transaction, you see. So Sage hasn't had to delete anything. It's just basically posted it, sent it back from where it came. If, again, not to muddy the waters too much, but I thought to myself, why have I just done that? Because I actually fixed it correctly. All I would have to do is delete that transaction. Again, financial year. I would delete. Do you wish to delete the entry? Yes. Done. It hasn't created a new posting anywhere else in this instance because there was no need to. We were simply just deleting a transaction as if it never happened. So if I head back to my bank account, you can see now that £100 is back to where it originally should have been. And there's a clear audit trail as to what has just happened there over the last 3 corrections. So first what we did was we edited the transaction itself. If you are to edit a critical field, it deletes and re-enters. If it's non-critical, i.e. one of the references, it won't delete the transaction, it will just update it, for want of a better phrase. We then posted the opposite. I've done it in a different order, but we then posted the opposite. So what you're doing is you're taking from column A, putting it to column B, and you're just sending it back. That's all you're doing, you're counterbalancing it. And then finally, we deleted the transaction, which is exactly what it says it is. It's a deletion, just goes. So you delete it as if it never happened, but there is obviously a record of the transaction there, and it will be highlighted in red as well. So any questions on that, please fire them in. We've got 3 willing helpers waiting to answer any questions on those 3 methods of correction for you there. Okay, now we're going to go into the next demonstration, which is a common error is a payment on account rather than allocating it to an invoice. It's quite a common call, this one, for our technicians. So what you would see here is you would see a customer balance going down, but the invoice is still outstanding. And that's because you've potentially just done what's called payment on account. So let's pick on PC World here, shall we? Let's have a look at their activity. Let's say they're going to make us a payment. So as we can see here, we've got 2 invoices outstanding for PC World. Okay, and they've paid off the top one there for 600. Just for note, their account balance is £900. Okay, we're going to pay off £600. I've quickly typed it in. Click save. You see the account balance has gone down. Superb. But what hasn't changed is this sales invoice is still outstanding because we haven't allocated that payment to that invoice. So how will we change that? So what we would do, if we go to PC World, after we'd clicked on customer receipt, and here we can see the payment on account, the SA, and we can see the sales invoice, the SI. All we would have to do is put these two together by typing in the values here. So we are using the £600 from the payment on account to pay off the £600 of the sales invoice. Click save. Again, that's my financial year. Close that. Account balance is still at 300. And when we look back into their account, it's gone. So the customer balance is always going to be the same. It's just that we haven't married those two things together. We didn't marry the payment or the invoice together. So your figures will be correct, but it'll still say that there's an invoice outstanding, which could have you chasing somebody for something that they've already paid. So it's always wise just to check to see if you do have any payments on account that need attributed to invoices at all. That's the best way to do it. If you were to enter it straight into here, that is where you create a payment on account. If you actually enter it into here, first time around, click save, you are paying off the invoice. So it's all married together. So the second common question to that one was if you'd allocated something to the wrong invoice. So let's say, again, I'm going to pick up PC World here. We've got that one invoice left, haven't we? 300. Let's say they were paying forward £300 to us, not towards an invoice, but I attributed it to the invoice in error. So I actually wanted that to be a payment on account this time, but I didn't make it a payment account. I actually paid off an invoice. How do I undo that? Quite simple. So in your transactions, you can see it here. PC World, £300 altogether. There's the details, £300 attributed to the SI. All we have to do is look to the top of our screen, and you can see this, and allocate. What this does quite literally is, you can see it here with the scissors and the paper, is it detaches the two. So you unallocate the payment from the invoice. So then we have another look at PC World. You can see now we have the both separate. So we've got the payment account for 300, and we've got the invoice for 300 also. We have separated them both. Hopefully that makes sense. So that is a simple way to allocate the payment account to a sales invoice, and also unallocate, which is a very common call, because you can appear to see, as I showed you there, the balances look normal. They look absolutely fine. The balances are what they should be. But if you've got stuff outstanding, it just means that things haven't been put where they should be, essentially. So the basic kind of instruction to avoid that is make sure that payments are allocated correctly. Okay, unallocate the payment and then manually reprocess it as well. Okay, any questions on that one? Keep them firing in. We've had a couple so far. Okay, looks like it's all making sense, which is very, very good indeed. The next demonstration I'm going to show you now is probably this third comment. We're doing like a little countdown here. We've got 4 in total. The third one here is with regards to the non-critical fields. So things that you can enter and that you may want to change. So the wrong tax code, nominal code, or date, essentially, is what we're going to be looking at. So I'll do a quick demonstration on that for you now. And what I'm going to use in the demonstration here is I'm going to use a transaction I created earlier, like Blue Peter, and it was for a petrol payment. And I'm looking through my transactions, and I can notice a couple of things are wrong here. So I notice that the date is wrong. I notice that the tax is wrong because there's been no tax applied to it. And if memory serves me right, it looks like the nominal code is wrong for me as well. So in this situation, what would I do? Well, I'd right click and edit, or I'd highlight, and edit is also available at the top. Both roads lead to Rome. So highlight and edit at the top, or right click and edit. And that's my financial year. And this is where the transaction is open. As you can see, some of it is grayed out, which would imply that we can't edit it from this section here. We could edit the date, which I'm going to. I'm going to say that was actually the 1st Feb. We can edit the description, and the reference, even the bank account that I left. All those three could be edited there. But what about what I was saying, the tax code, the nominal code? Well, this button down here in the bottom right-hand corner, we click on edit here, brings up the screen, and it shows us further things that can be edited, more critical fields that can be edited. So my nominal code, I was correct in presuming it was wrong. It was done under repairs and servicing. Should have been fuel and oil for me. This is how I structure my nominal codes. Yours might be different, but for me, and the purpose of the demonstration, this is how I've organized mine. I would simply change that there. Also, notice the tax code is 0. That's incorrect. This has been input quickly and incorrectly. So what I want to do is change that T1. It saves it asks me, do you want me to do some work? I'll say yes, I do. Recalculate the tax code for me. Click yes. And there we go. So what I've changed there over those two screens is the date, the nominal code, the tax code. You can also change department. Again, details there, product reference, etc. But for the sake of the demonstration, I'm going through the most common areas. And then I would just click close. I would like to save those changes, so I click save. Do I wish to post them? Yes, I do, because I'm confident. So there. What changes that had? These are the changes. So it's cancelled the original down here, but it hasn't changed the transaction number at all. It's remained the same, but it's letting me know that it has been edited. So now you can see everything else is correct. So that is another common mistake, is editing a bank payment. So what we did there was we changed the date, and that cancelled the original transaction, as did changing the nominal code, and as did changing the tax code. It cancelled them. But it did not change the transaction number. That stayed the same, so it'll still be where it was looking for. Any questions on that? Keep them firing in. Keeping Michael nice and busy. There we are. And now we're going to move into the fourth and final scenario, which is deleting a reconciled transaction. Let's have a look here. So this is another common one, and it can't be a confusing one. And I'm going to use an analogy for this one, just to try and help you visualize what I mean. So if we were to pick a reconciled transaction, let's pick this one here. Again, payment on account. And I know that this is incorrect, and I need to delete it to reprocess it, but it's been reconciled. So that's obviously going to have effect on my balances. And when I re-input the correct amounts in the correct transaction, what I need to do is I need to tuck that back in to the reconciliation. So imagine a Jenga tower in front of you, and it's a complete Jenga tower, and each transaction is a block. If you take out one of those blocks, it doesn't balance anymore. It's wobbly. So what you want to do is you want to put that block back in. How do we do that? So most important thing first is take a backup before you do this, just in case you don't like how it looks afterwards. What you would do here is you would double click into the transaction itself. And what I do is I use my snipping tool. You could also do a screen grab or whatever it is that you use in order to do this kind of utility, and I would copy this. The reason I'm doing that is so I've got all the details of the transaction. So I use this snipping tool. So I've got all the details now of that transaction. I would then delete the transaction because I don't want to use it anymore. It's incorrect. Sage will warn me it has been reconciled and it is going to change some of the balances. Oh, sure, I want to continue. Yes, I do. Absolutely. So then when I go to recreate that transaction, okay, what I would do is I'll go ahead and just quickly create it for purposes here. Payroll account, click save. Again, I'm whizzing through this because we all know how to create payroll account. Close that. I'm going to go back to my transactions. Once I've correctly entered all the details that I originally wanted, find the transaction here, click on edit. And there's a box here which says bank reconciled on. Let me get an example for you here because that one's frozen out. Yeah, bank reconciled on. So I've collected all the correct details in, happy with it. What I would do is put a tick in this box, and I would then put the date in which it was reconciled on. And that date I still have available from my snipping tool here. So 1st of the 11th, 2024. Click save. Post the changes, and what that's going to do is going to put that block back in to the Jenga tower, and it's going to complete that reconciliation again, because what I've taken out, I've popped back in. I've manually instructed Sage, yeah, I know I deleted that reconcile transaction, but here's the copy of it. Now it's correct. Click save. Done. So it may seem daunting, and the instant thought might be, oh, if I've reconciled it, I'm going to have to undo the reconciliation, recalculate. And if that was done a few reconciliations ago, it's added more. A lot simpler than that. Take a backup, record the details of the transaction, delete the transaction, manually reprocess, edit the transaction, and just tuck it back in to where it came. That's summarized here. So if it was VAT reconciled, the transaction that you were to delete, it would be auto reversed for you by Sage. Okay. VAT cash account, exactly the same as above. I'm not going to delve too much into those areas specifically because we do have standalone VAT webinars and it would create another half-hour conversation. But if it is VAT reconciled, Sage will automatically take care of that for you so that on your next VAT return, it was corrected when you processed it, in essence. Question here from David. Let me just catch up here. So, sorry, Jackie, my program wasn't working correctly there, so I demonstrated on it a different transaction, correct? But that is how you would do it. You would basically put a tick in the box for the back reconciliation and just manually enter the date. So yeah, good spot. David, your change of tax for the fuel cost is not correct. The gross, yeah, the figures, let me have a look. It was basically to show and demonstrate. Let me bring that up for you here. So that was the original. Where is the manual here? Petrol payment for you to edit. You can see net 100, tax 20. So again, for the purposes of this, we're not using exact figures. It would amount to whatever your individual transaction would be. So my petrol payment was 100, but there was no tax on it. The tax was at 0. So by changing the tax code to what it should have been, it is now applied the correct amount of tax to it in that instance. If that makes sense. Absolutely, Emma. So essentially, if you delete a reconciled transaction, just to read your question out, so say again what it refers to by tucking it back in. So that is basically what you're doing. If you have a reconciled transaction, let's say in November, and you delete it, you're taking a transaction away from that reconciliation. So if there was 100 transactions in there, there's now 99. And if you're going to put it back in there, the way of doing it would be to edit the transaction and tucking it back in manually here. So if I wanted to put this into November, I would manually input the date there. So if I've deleted the transaction from that reconciliation, it's created a hole. It's not going to balance anymore if it did balance originally. To manually put it back in, you would right click and then edit, and you would manually place it back in to the reconciliation. Does that make sense? Okay, spot on. So yeah, a bit of confusion about that one, but just to clear it up, if you have deleted a reconciled transaction, right click, edit, you can manually place it back into that reconciled date. So you put a brick in the wall again. Keep the questions coming in. I'm going to check and see if there's any unanswered. I think the guys are on top of it so far. Let's have a look. But it would be already allocated in what way do you mean? Sorry, Julia. Good question there. So if it is ticked as all figures the same, does it re-show to be allocated next time we reconcile this statement? Well, it would be you've manually placed it back inside that reconciliation. So yeah, it would automatically be there because that's what you're doing by applying that date to it. I think Abby's just going to answer that directly as well. Superb. So keep the questions coming in. Some really good questions coming in today. So yeah, keep firing away. Anything that you've been unsure of that I've showed or demonstrated would be wonderful because we can clear it up now for you. But in summary, while I'm waiting for further questions to come in, what we've done today is we've gone through 4 common errors and their fixes. Again, we don't really have the scope or the time to go through every single error because there's a multitude of them. But these main methods of correction will help you in your day-to-day processing. As soon as you've identified a mistake, it's going to be one of these 3 that solve it. Definitely. The best course of action is before any large processing takes place, VAT returns, anything like that at all, a major process, take a backup just before. Sometimes it's easier to restore back to the starting point than it is, to follow the breadcrumbs about what has happened. That will help you identify the error and fix it quickly. And obviously we've laboured the point I think I have today. There's 3 options of bank corrections, which are edit, delete, and posting the opposite. In the handout is the next table, which is the nominal transactions. This is worth its weight in gold, and it's what, when I was a technician, was given to me when I first started. It is the type of transaction on the left-hand side, full description of it, obviously, how you would enter it, what does the transaction mean in real life, and then the double entry, the reversal of that. So if you've done a BP, a bank payment, you do a BR, a bank receipt, to counterbalance that. So if you haven't already, click on the handout now and download it, because this table is going to come in hugely helpful for you in the future. Not only that, but our help and resources, I've included some links So how to delete or reverse a bank transfer, which we went through initially. Then we've got corrections. So the correction series that we went through last time, the webinars that we ran on there, each an individual one, as you can see from the titles that are available there, links to each pre-recorded webinar that you'll be able to watch, look back on. And then also a handy guide on what information you can edit on a transaction. To continue the Banking Excellence webinar series, as I say, we've got Fast Finance, harness the power of e-payments in stage 50. We've got Pay Ready Invoices, adding your bank information to your invoices in stage 50. And then the quiz, the fun quiz, for Bank on Your Knowledge, and that's going to be myself and Jackie hosting that all together. If you want to further your knowledge, we've got free learning in Sage University, bite-sized videos from anything from pure beginner to intermediate Sage users. There's going to be content there for you to digest, have a look at, and learn new things, or maybe just refresh the memory. Maybe processes that you don't do often, you want to have a look at again. I've been through some of them, but the upcoming webinars that we've got Tuesday, 11th of February, e-payments. Wednesday the 12th, we've got simplifying your bank transactions. And then on Thursday, we have the Banking Excellence quiz. Looking forward to that one. We also are offering our bespoke one-to-one training now. So you can book an expert at Sage to give you a call over Teams, and they can go through processes for you, stock control, banking, debtors, creditors, etc. Loads of subjects, and they can make you experts by teaching you directly one-to-one. It could be 1 to 2, 1 to 3, depending on how many people you want trained at the time, but that is, again, invaluable, having a brain right there by the hour to speak you through your processes. What I'm going to do now is quickly play you a short video, and then I'm going to come back to you. It shan't be a moment, but it is to do with the banking badge. So there we are, wonderful. Wonderful. So I think there's just a couple of questions being answered now. Maybe one more. So what I will do is, while that's being answered, I'll thank you all for your attendance today. You've been marvellous. Thank you very much for keeping all the questions coming through. Would love to hear your thoughts on the session, thoughts on what I can improve or you enjoyed, also topics that you want us to cover in the future would be excellent as well. We read every single comment, trust me, so your feedback is very, very important to us. I will put myself on mute just for a second, and we'll come back to you just while the final question is being answered. That should be 2 seconds. Superb, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. That was Jackie typing extremely fast there, which was superb. Right then, that has been answered. Thank you again, all for your patience, all for your attention. I hope you have a marvellous week. If we don't speak to you tomorrow, the weekend, and we'll see you in the future webinars. Bye for now.